Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, fresh off vacation, tan, ready to go, and that's why you subscribe to the YouTube channel, because now you can see how much tanner I get than my co-host, my tagliere, and of course, Kyle Yates. These are like the different stages of tan. I think Yates might be all the way on the other end of the spectrum, which is weird, because he's been out there doing manual labor for all these weeks. You'd think he would be so much tanner than he is, but you'll never be Joey P tan. But I'm refreshed and ready to go. We got a great show for you today. It's the NFC East Preview. We're going to break down the teams, the sleepers, the breakouts, the busts, and of course, stick around for the end because we got a little game time for you. We're going to do a little what's trending with the boys and have some fun. Yates, the family's getting bigger. You're starting to prepare. You got the NFL season. This is going to be a busy year for you, my friend.
Every single year, apparently, is going to be a busy year for me. With last year, it was the move during the NFL season. This year, going to have a baby during the... Well, my wife's going to have a baby during the NFL season.
Good point there.
Yep, good catch.
You want to lay that out. Yates is not having it.
Yep.
He's not doing the work. Okay.
It's going to be great. We found out that we're having a boy over the weekend, so fantastic. Cannot wait. The house is going to be pure chaos now with two boys.
And Tags, how's your first summer going in Nashville for you? Now you're out there, it's the heat. Like, how are you adjusting here to this non-Illinois lifestyle?
It's good. I'm out there getting tan. I'm outside a lot more often because I actually have a yard, which is really cool. We get to do things. But I just want to say that is it a pet peeve? It's like a pet peeve of mine. Is it yours as well? When a guy says we're pregnant. And I'm like, no. We're not anything. She's pregnant. You guys are having a baby together. Like, so am I the only one that, like, when someone says we're pregnant, I'm like, no, you're not.
I agree. I think that's a weird saying. I totally do. Yates didn't say that, I don't think.
No,
I gotta check the tape.
He didn't. I'd call it out if he did, but he did not say that.
I catch myself saying it from time to time, and I'm like, wait, no, that's not right. That's taking way too much credit.
Way too much credit. You're not doing any of the work, but we're gonna do the work for you here. As we always do, breaking down these teams, talking about football for you on this glorious Monday morning here. And I want to remind everybody, too, make sure that you use that Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard. Go to FantasyPros.com. We've got that for you, as always. And we've got that great chat on Discord, which is going to be the thing. This is where all the cool kids are going to hang out and talk football with us. So run right now to fantasypros.com/chat. Get involved with that because it's going to be amazing. We're going to be doing all kinds of AMAs on there. We're going to do these things where we bring people up and you can ask us questions like on video. You, just right there, the people. We're the People's Podcast, and you're going to get to interact with us, but you got to join at fantasypros.com/chat in order to do that. It's free to join, but premium subscribers are going to get more of the perks again. So make sure you... Just at least consider upgrading to that premium product that we're going to offer out there on fantasypros.com/chat. I think it's going to be well worth it come draft season, which is basically upon us very quickly. And of course, don't forget about free stuff. We only have just days remaining in that Stefon Diggs jersey giveaway, thanks to our good pals over at Pristine Auction. Again, Stefon Diggs jersey can be yours. You just got to go to fantasypros.com/contest to get in on that good stuff. Just got to leave a review of the show on Apple Podcasts or CastBox, screenshot it, go to fantasypros.com/contest, upload that bad boy, and just like that, Stefon Diggs, the breakout wide receiver of last year, taking his game from A to A+, really tremendous, and an autographed jersey. You can hang right behind you and look like Tags and Yates, where you have all the cool autographed jerseys. I don't have any autographed jerseys behind me. I'm starting to get a little jersey envy, but that is no matter, because I'm actually the guy who lives in Jersey, after all. So let's get after it, and let's start here with the Dallas Cowboys, a team offensively that had, such an incredible tease to the season. My goodness, boys. The Dallas Cowboys got off to a really good start in terms of fantasy, which we were all looking for, and we all felt so good. And I had so many Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb shares, and now, they all went up in smoke for me, and it was a little sad after week 5. But we're back again. The defense got better last year when Van Der Esch came back, and certainly with Micah Parsons will be better. Will it be great? Probably not. So, Tags, are we set up here for the Dallas Cowboys to once again be a fantasy offensive force that we want to be buying in with both hands?
I mean, I don't think you want to bet on last year's totals because Dak Prescott was putting like all-time numbers up there. He was throwing the ball, sometimes over 50 times per game, which is just, I mean, I know it's become a passing league, but it's not going to be that. They're going to get back to Ezekiel Elliott. They're going to get back to the run game a little bit because their offensive line will be healthy, but it's going to be a potent offense, that's for sure. And it's a very top-heavy offense in terms of like, a lot of teams, what happens is when you sit down and do projections, you'll go through and you'll say, okay, these wide receivers are getting this, and then you have to look at the rest of the depth chart, and it's like, okay, this guy's getting 32 targets, this guy's getting 24, this guy's getting 17. With the Cowboys, it's really not like that. They're very top heavy. They use the 3 wide receiver sets. The backups come onto the field when there's an injury, and that's just about it. They don't rotate wide receivers. And the tight ends have gotten there's just a lot of volume to go around this offense. So this is one of those teams where when you sit down and do projections, you just realize the potential of it, because most of the time there's no way in projections you're going to get 3 wide receivers on one team finishing as top 36 options, because it's not a likely scenario. With the Cowboys, they were the team that did it. Actually, Gallup came in at wide receiver 35. Now again, I'm not going to rank Gallup at wide receiver 35 because I think that the upside is capped in terms of where you're drafting him, but he is someone that you can plug in during bye weeks. You understand that the boomer bust nature of him. He's stretching the field for them. The bigger question for me is how they changed their offense in 2021, because CeeDee Lamb ran, I think it was 93% of his routes from the slot last year, which if that changes, it's really going to change CeeDee Lamb's outlook. It's going to change either Amari Cooper or Michael Gallup's, because they talked about moving Gallup into the slot this offseason. And if they do that, it's going to create some mismatches for him. And that's part of the reason, Joe, that I believe CeeDee Lamb was as successful as he was last year, because he got to match up with those nickel cornerbacks. He got to match up with some safeties, whereas Amari Cooper is typically lining up against that number 1 corner. So if they start putting CeeDee Lamb on the perimeter a bit more, he might not be as efficient with the targets he's getting. So that's really my biggest question mark about this team this year.
Well, that's definitely something to keep an eye on as we go through the offseason into obviously the preseason here and camp. But, I got to tell you, Tegs, I kind of disagree with the Dak Prescott take in the beginning, because it was only 2 years ago this guy nearly threw for 5,000 yards. Mm-hmm. And last year, you're right, he was on a historic pace. And Ezekiel Elliott is another year older, and we all know NFL age for running backs is something to be concerned with. He's got a lot of miles, and I'm not saying he's done. I'm not going to call Ezekiel Elliott a bust either. But Yates, I'm of the mind that Dak actually has a real shot here to be QB1 overall. I'm talking 5,000 yards. I'm talking maybe 50 touchdown kind of season. I think this offense is going to be capable of that potentially. And outside of Washington, they have to play twice. I look at the schedule, and I think the Cowboys could at least approach that, especially with a 17-game season, that extra game we got. So what are your thoughts here with Prescott and what Tags laid out here in terms of the wide receivers and how it's all going to work out?
Yeah, so with Dak, I think it absolutely is in the realm of possibilities that he finishes as the overall QB1. Now, a lot has to go his way. He has to, finish with 5+ rushing touchdowns, right? That has to be in the cards as well, because in order to be able to compete with and beat out Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, these other guys who are going to get those easy points with easy fantasy points with the rushing touchdowns, he has to be able to do that as well on top of the ridiculous passing yardage. So I think when you sit down and you do projections like Tags mentioned, it's very easy to like all of these options, right? Like I've got Zeke at RB6. I've got Amari Cooper at wide receiver 13, CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 20, Michael Gallup, wide receiver 35 from a projection standpoint. So all of these guys, Blake Jarwin, we'll talk about him in a little bit. I've got him at tight end 14. So all of these guys kind of just line up to be able to say that it is going to lead to success for Dak. Now it just comes down to, are they going to try to balance this offense out a little bit more? Will they be able to? Because yes, they did make some investments on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL draft, but I didn't think that those were really premium players that they drafted at those spots that are going to step in and make an immediate impact year one. So I do think that we're going to see this offense airing it out quite a bit again in in 2021.
You're going to have a lot more Blake Jarwin conversation a little later in the show, so make sure you stick around for that. But Yates, I want to stick with you for a second about Ezekiel Elliott, if I may. And obviously some of the stats were, again, difficult to parse because you took away the big cog in the offense, Dak Prescott, making everything go, and you downgraded substantially a quarterback from Dak to Dalton and the other cast of characters. So where are you right now in terms of your value? I know some people out there right now, analyst-wise, feel very good, like you're getting a discount on Zeke, he's very safe. A lot of people felt like last year he was a very safe pick. Sometimes that can be a huge trap. Are we setting ourselves up for failure when we think about Ezekiel Elliott as safe, or Is this a discount that we should take advantage of, in your opinion, in 21?
I do think that it's a bit of a discount that we can take advantage of, but it is difficult because you did have essentially two Zekes last year, right? The one with
one
Dak
of my
on the
favorite
field,
novels, by the way. I just want to say
the one with Dak on the field from weeks 1 through 5 was just incredible. He was putting up absurd fantasy numbers because the offense was absolutely humming. Now, when you went to Andy Dalton, you saw Zeke, I don't know, just give up. I don't know what we saw here from Zeke, and Tag says some stats with like the expected opportunity that I'm sure he's going to talk about that illustrate that. But I think with Dak healthy and on the field, you are going to see scoring opportunities galore for Ezekiel Elliott. We know that he's going to get the work in the red zone. So I think all of that just goes together for me to say that I feel very comfortable taking Zeke in the first round, especially, again, I've got him at RB6. So it's not like I'm projecting him here as a top 4 option or anything like that, top 3, saying that he's going to beat out Dalvin Cook or Alvin Kamara. But I do think that he is going to be that safe option that you know what you're going to get from him week in and week out, and he does have some upside along with it.
All right, Tags, I know I saw the tweet that you had too about Ezekiel Elliott's disappointing expected outcomes from last year. So for those of you who didn't see that, can you expand on that a little bit and kind of talk to that and why maybe this should be concerning for 2021?
Yeah, so basically what happens is every touch a running back gets, carry they get, target they get, all those things based on where it's at on the field, they have an expected fantasy output. And Ezekiel Elliott is continually at the top of that list. Last year, the only players ahead of him in terms of actual expected output were Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, which goes to show you just his opportunity is everything. And we talk about that with running backs, and there's a reason that people say running backs don't matter, this and that, because running backs typically don't finish too far from their opportunity that they received. And Ezekiel Elliott finished 8 spots lower than he was expected to, which is, it's very rare for that to happen. You just don't see it. It's almost as rare as, Nick Chubb. He was expected to finish 24th and he finished 9th. It just goes to show Nick Chubb far exceeded expectations, and he's going to regress a little bit. It's like the same thing for Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott, he's going to regress to the mean, and he's going to get back to where his opportunity is, just because that's what happens. And if you look at the years past, I actually went back and looked at Zeke. I'm like, how has he done in terms of as far as expected fantasy output and what he's done? He has never been elite. I will say that right now. I went through the years and it was like 24th, 53rd, 18th, and then this year he was actually the worst in the league. So he's going to get back to his normal levels, which is usually slightly above average. So therefore, again, RB3 is what we're talking about. We have a guy that has never finished outside RB1 territory. This is what you look for in the first round of fantasy drafts. You don't want to win your fantasy league in the first round. You're not going to win your fantasy league in the first round. You're going to win it in the middle rounds, late rounds, where you find the guys that hit there. Everyone knows who's going in the first few rounds. You cannot make a big mistake. Ezekiel Elliott will not be a mistake. Will he be the number 3 running back? Maybe not. But he's going to finish as a top 10 running back with Ezekiel or with Dak Prescott under center. So therefore, it's one of the safest picks in all of fantasy football. So Yates said RB6. That's exactly where I have him.
All right. Well, here's another wrinkle I'm going to throw in there too, just to follow up. But what about the age? It's one thing to go back and look at what
he's not even that old, dude.
No. Not age of the running back. I'm talking about like age of the miles of the running back, because it's funny. We all want to freak out about the workload of Derrick Henry for 2 years, but what about the workload of Ezekiel Elliott for the last 4 or 5? I mean, just saying, it's typically speaking, when you hit that 5th year or so in the NFL for a running back, there, starts to be decline. What are the chances what you see in those stats that you're talking about right now is actually decline and not necessarily the drop-off in quarterback play? I guess that's the point I'm making.
It could be partially decline, but Yates and I were talking about this when I talked to you guys about that stat, is that if you look at it with Dak Prescott under center and what it was without Dak Prescott, it changed. And on top of that, their offensive line, they were down to one healthy offensive lineman towards the end of the year. So that's going to contribute to that. There's so many different numbers that go into that. But again, even though Ezekiel Elliott was the least efficient running back in football last year in terms of, points below expected output, he still finished as an RB1, like the number 11 running back, which just goes to show you. But now getting Ezekiel Elliott back, getting an offensive line back, the defense did get upgraded this offseason, so I don't think they can get any worse. So, there's a lot of things. And they're going to use Tony Pollard as well. I have this split going to Ezekiel Elliott 263 carries, Tony Pollard 112 of them. So it is somewhat of a timeshare, but it's still Zeke's show. They didn't pay him all that money in order to sit him on the bench.
And look, these are important questions I think they have to be asked, because I think people, they look at Ezekiel Elliott, they see all the past, and that's fair. Track record is important, but at the same time, let's start to also look realistically about the mileage too, and mitigate that risk maybe slightly. And where you're getting Ezekiel Elliott right now in terms of ECR, it's in that that spot where you're talking about Nick Chubb, you're talking about some of these other running backs, and who might be younger with some upside, and it's a real question you're gonna have to ask yourself. All right, before we move on to the next team here, I want to tell you that I know Tags has been scoping around on Deal Dash all weekend. This is all he does now. So he does football stuff Monday through Friday, then Saturday, Sunday, it's all Deal Dash. And he has saved a lot of big money there. And he'll tell you all about it, I'm sure, on his latest blog that he's got. Tags got a lot of these things. But they have auctions on crazy stuff, a wide variety of products, a lot of quality stuff. And look, people are winning just like Tags. And they're truly shocking prices. So here's the question. How much can you save at DealDash.com? And that's completely up to you. Some people save as much as 80%. Some have 90% savings. And some have up to 99%. That's crazy. And this is why Tags likes it. He just likes winning things on the cheap. This is his thing. So visit DealDash.com today and see how much you can save. Use the promo code PROS with your first purchase, and you get 100 free bids. That's DealDash.com, promo code, again, PROS. And again, that is starting to save today. DealDash.com, where dreams and deals come true. Tags, what was that latest item that you bought there? You bought for yourself?
I bought you some burn cream is what I bought.
Ah, that's good for my nice, beautiful head. There you go. Feels good. All right. I appreciate you. I look good looking out, my friend. See, that's what real friends do. All right. Let's move on here to the next team. And it is the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is a polarizing team, I think, fantasy-wise, because there are camps of people that are already ready to anoint Jalen Hurts in this kind of Kyler Murray mold. And then there's some other people that are not quite there. I feel like I'm on the not quite there, and I love the player. I love the talent. I love the dude. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He showed you in college. You know what? You don't think I'm good enough? I'm going to go prove you wrong. Same thing in the pros. He's got that thing that's going to make him successful. I just think there's a lot of variables here with the Eagles that all have to come together very quickly for this to work. New coach, new playbook, new personnel, new offensive line. New. Typically speaking, in the NFL is difficult, even with the best franchises. And no offense, Eagles, but you haven't always been the best franchises in terms of some of these decision-making process. Yates, I feel like you're more kind of where I am when it comes to Hurts in this offense. Let's start here. Realistic expectations. Everyone's excited because what you said before, the rushing equity, right? That's something that could automatically, even if he's just mediocre, push him into QB1 territory in a good, solid, low-end QB1. But is there something we're not counting for, which is that week-to-week ebb and flow potentially of Jalen Hurts?
I think that Hurts is going to be a very safe option week in and week out because of the rushing ability and what he brings to the table. Like we saw last year, 14 rush attempts per game? Like it was just absurd what he was doing as far as being able to utilize his legs and utilize his mobility, which he is a fantastic runner. But I think the issue here is, where's the upside? How does he get to that QB5 status that I'm seeing on Twitter, where people are like, he's going to finish as a top 5 option? I'm like, where is that coming from? Because the surrounding cast here in Philadelphia is not like an elite cast, right? You've got Jalen Reagor, very unproven. DeVonta Smith, he's fantastic, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't proven it in the NFL that he can succeed at that size. Zach Ertz is on the decline. Dallas Goedert can take that step forward, but he's got to get the main opportunity here. And Jalen Hurts, we've got a long track record of looking back and saying that he is not a refined NFL quarterback. He's not a refined passing quarterback. Like 52% completion rate last year. Like that is not, it's not good, guys. So all of this goes together for me to say that at QB 10 or whatever his ECR is right now, he's going ahead of some other guys. His ADP, I think, is going to be really high as well, because the general consensus is also going to buy into this rushing mobility. And that is just, you're buying him, I think, at his ceiling, where he falls into this streaming quarterback category for me, where I'm fine plugging him into my lineup week in and week out because I know what I'm going to get as that safe floor. But I just don't see the upside here.
I like him in Superflex. I like him in Best Ball. Those are the spots where I really like Jalen Hurts because some of the big game potentially offers. But Tags, you probably know this off the top of your head. Let's take the hat off and peel into the beautiful mind of Tags. Tell me something. How often does a quarterback finish top 5 in fantasy but doesn't run a top 5 offense in the NFL?
Well, that's the problem, right? That's an article. That's an article that's going to be coming out in the middle of this month.
You're welcome.
Of July.
Yeah,
actually,
I just gave everyone that article. You're welcome. Everybody.
Yeah, it's the article is called "What Does Team Scoring Mean to Fantasy Football?" And basically, if you're not in a top 18 scoring offense, you are not finishing as a top 12 quarterback. Like, no matter what, it just doesn't happen. There's been one quarterback, I think, over the last 8 years that's done it, and it was Cam Newton. So here's the reason that I'm going to say that I understand where some people are coming from with Jalen Hurts, and it's the same thing that happened, and it's a very similar situation. Lamar Jackson, when he took over for the Ravens a couple of years ago, Flacco, they finally decided to say, hey, we're going to give Lamar Jackson a couple starts. And he did a lot with his mobility, and his passing was horrendous. And it was like, and going into the next year, I sat down to do projections, and we knew Lamar Jackson was going to be the starter. And I said, he's popping up as QB7 in my rankings, but I'm not putting him there, because that year he was going around QB14, QB15. Some people thought he was going to break out. My projections were much higher than I wanted them to be on him. And it's the same thing happening with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, I sat down, my projections came out to QB7, where I'm obviously higher on him than Yates right now. I think his ceiling I think it's around probably QB5. And I'm saying that because you're right. The options he's got to throw to are not particularly great. However, I will say this, Yates. If we give Jalen Hurts even Kyler Murray's rushing upside from his rookie year, which is definitely possible because Murray didn't run as much as I think some people expected him to. He finished as a top 6 quarterback, if I'm not mistaken, that year, and Kyler Murray averaged 6.9 yards per attempt. He didn't throw a whole bunch of touchdowns. This rushing ability, this rushing upside that people have now in the league, it's the reason I talk about when you're looking for potential breakouts, you can't do it with a pocket passer. Justin Herbert just had an all-time rookie season. Like, he played fantastic, right? And I think he finishes like QB9. So it's like you look at all these things and you're like, you need that mobility. And Jalen Hurts absolutely has it. And the variables that he has, it's a new coaching staff, right? You know, if for whatever reason this coaching staff with Nick Sirianni comes over and they're even a glimpse of what Frank Reich brings to the table, all of a sudden Jalen Hurts is going to be more efficient as a passer. He is going to have rushing totals. We know that. In Oklahoma, I mean, I didn't expect Jalen Hurts to light the world on fire in the NFL, but I did think he was going to be a good fan. I felt like he was a quality quarterbag. I think he's a better passer than Cam Newton. And Cam Newton, we saw what he did.
It's not a very high bar.
Yeah,
No. Believe me, I know it's not, but it's something. And now you have DeVonta Smith, who's actually a legitimate NFL wide receiver.
Right. No, agreed.
I like Dallas Goedert. There are some options here, but I'm going to go back to Kyler Murray. I'm going to go back to Lamar Jackson. I'm going to say, if this guy can rush for 700 yards, which I think is absolutely possible, you're going to get a guy that's going to finish as a top 8 quarterback. So honestly, at QB10, he's worth it because there are quarterbacks going after him that might be safer. But are you going to win a fantasy championship because you drafted, Aaron Rodgers or Justin Herbert? I don't think so.
Well, in a single quarterback league, I can understand taking the shot with Hurts. But I think Hurts is one of those quarterbacks, when you take that shot, that it wouldn't kill you to have one of those.
To get a stable quarterback.
To get that Kirk Cousins guy or that Matt Ryan guy or something like that.
As Yates said, though, you're going to get some sort of floor with Jalen Hurts on a week-to-week basis because of the mobility. And you're just hoping that he turns into Lamar Jackson from 2019 just because you just need a higher touchdown rate. That's basically what happened with Lamar Jackson. He had the mobility and all that.
Right.
Go ahead, Yates.
Well, I mean, Lamar Jackson threw for 35 passing
Exactly.
touchdowns.
It was like a
zero
8 or 9%
chance that happens with
rate.
Jalen Hurts this year. Yeah. Like, zero.
I got him down for 26. I have him for 26.
So, I'm down for 17.
Cool.
So that's a big difference.
Wow, okay.
Like, I mean, his touchdown rate last year was 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So I get it. It was a small sample size.
And it was terrible receivers.
The receivers this year are not as much of an upgrade. So, I mean, I've got him down for 138.
We're putting a lot onto the rookie. So let's talk about how much does the rookie DeVonta Smith, let's switch gears here. How much does DeVonta Smith and possibly the rebirth of Jalen Reagor change that equation, Yates, for you?
They've got to take a massive step forward. Okay. Like, they have to be truly dominant in order for Jalen Hurts to take that massive step forward. Like, I don't see that happening. So I've got DeVonta Smith down for 98 targets, 61 receptions, 753 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. I've got Reagor with 57, 672, and 3. So and then Travis Fulgham, I think, is going to be the starter, but I'm not expecting big things from Fulgham. Dallas Goedert, yes, he can be that guy, but again, this is putting a lot of faith in Jalen Hurts. And the issue is coupling what Tag said, like, the safe floor, I get that, and I'm advocating for it. But when you look at where he's going as ECR QB10, And I think that we're going to see that rise as we get, ADP. I think that we're going to see that rise as we get closer and closer to draft season behind him. Ryan Tannehill. Give me Ryan Tannehill over Jalen Hurts all day. Matthew Stafford. Give me Stafford. Burrow. Give me Burrow. I mean, and then we get into Matt Ryan. I don't understand why Matt Ryan's still at ECR QB 14, but like that's kind of the range here now, where it's like, okay, Trevor Lawrence. No, I'll take Jalen Hurts in that situation. Kirk Cousins. I'll take the upside. I'll take the shot there because now we're in the streaming quarterback category. That's where I think he needs to be put in, rather than this. If you're being drafted as a top 10 quarterback, you're now in the category of you need to be a weekly starter. I'm spending a high pick on you where I can't move off of you easily enough. Whereas, and I do think that we're going to see him start to rise. So he's more of a streaming quarterback for me rather than a locked-in weekly starter.
All right, let's switch gears about the running back situation there. Miles Sanders, obviously, is still there, leading the top of this depth chart. Then you've got Boston Scott, Kerryon Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell from the draft. Jordan Howard's been in this camp. I don't know. This is a tough one for me. I like the talent of Miles Sanders. He's not a guy that has to touch the football 20-something times to have an impact on the game. However, I am a little concerned between the rushing of Jalen Hurts and the options in the backfield that Miles Sanders, once again, maybe a false sense of security is kind of lurking attached to his value coming into draft season tags. How do you see this backfield of the Eagles?
I mean, if it's anything, I
think you said it all. I think that's it. I pretty much.
If it's anything like Frank Reich out there in Indy, Yates brought this up when they drafted Kenneth Gainwell. Is that can Gainwell be that Nyheim Hines type player? Is that who they expect him to be? The fact that the reason that I don't want to go all in on that theory right now is just because they did wait so long to draft him. Because he was on the board, and I think a lot of people, myself included, expected him to be a day 2 pick. Like I thought he'd go in the 3rd round, but he lasted all the way till the 6th round. I think it was it fifth? So he lasted a lot longer than expected. So it wasn't a priority for them. So they already had Boston Scott on the roster. I suppose they could have been like, well, he's a guy for that job. But then they go out and, Kerryon Johnson gets cut. And it's like they're the first ones in line to say, hey, we want Kerryon Johnson. So clearly they want some sort of timeshare here. Miles Sanders played a lot better down the stretch with Jalen Hurts under center, right, which is usually the case. A lot of running backs, they tend to do better on an efficiency standpoint when they have a mobile quarterback under center.
Well, sure, they wear out the defensive line who's chasing the mobile quarterback, and then you hand the ball off to the guy who's even faster than the quarterback, and of course he's going to break through holes. I think that's part of it.
It's not even necessarily that though, but you have to keep a QB spy on it with Jalen Hurts, where it's like you have to assign a linebacker or a safety to the quarterback because there's always a possibility that he has the ball and Miles Sanders doesn't, because they do a lot of these disguises that they do to try and basically separate the two. Miles Sanders was better. You do lose some touchdown upside with someone like Jalen Hurts under center, because think about it with Josh Allen. Think about it with Lamar Jackson. Even though Lamar Jackson hasn't stolen as many touchdowns as he should have, Kyler Murray, they start to lose some touchdown upside there. But again, this is going to be a timeshare, and that just tells me Miles Sanders, if you want him as an RB2, like if you get him in like the 4th round, I'm cool with that. But do not take him thinking you're getting a steal as the 15th running back off the board, and that he's going to live up to the expectations that people had a couple of years ago as an RB1. He's just not going to do it as long as this coaching staff gets what they want and have all the players in the field.
Yates, do you see it the same way?
I do. I've got Miles Sanders outside my top 20 running backs, and it's for a lot of the reasons that Tags mentioned, that he laid out, that this seems like we're barreling towards a rotation, a running back by committee. And Miles Sanders, yes, he can be extremely efficient with this opportunity, but the touchdown upside just probably isn't there. And again, this is not an offense that I'm expecting big things from, right? Like this is not an offense that I think is going to be a top 15 offense in terms of scoring production. So if Miles Sanders isn't getting the touchdown opportunities as a whole, right, because the pie is smaller, and then he has to split it with Jalen Hurts from the goal line perspective, then that's something that I just don't think the upside's there.
All right, let's go and switch gears to the Giants, a team that was active this offseason, adding Kenny Golladay along with Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. They also drafted Kadarius Toney. They brought in John Ross. So they're definitely looking to add more athleticism to that wide receiver core, no doubt about that. There's a lot of speed there as well when you bring in guys like Toney and Ross. And then you've got a returning Saquon Barkley from injury yet again, 2 years in a row. We're kind of waiting for that to happen. And Daniel Jones, who is basically in the last breath. This is it. Kind of, we've got 1 million draft picks. If you're not the guy, we're going to know this year, and we're going to go ahead and draft somebody else. So, Yates, let's start with you with this one. Your overall look at the Giants, and of course, I didn't miss Evan Ingram as well. Let's throw him into this pile as well. This Giants offense has talent around it, but the question is, what can they get out of this talent at this stage? And I think that is a real question we have to ask ourselves. So I'll ask it of you. What is your expectation for them in 21?
Man, it's expecting a ton from Daniel Jones to take a massive step forward. Daniel Jones last year, 14 games played, 11 passing touchdowns, 10 interceptions.
It was brutal.
Just, oh my word, it's so bad.
He's had over 50 turnovers in his career in 20-something games. It's absurd. He's almost 2 turnovers a game just right off the bat. That kills an offense. That kills your fantasy productivity.
It does. And I mean, the Giants are doing this the right way. Like, they're surrounding this rookie quarterback, or this young quarterback that they've brought in, and they're doing everything that they can to surround it with weapons. They're doing it the right way. Now, I just don't think that they got the right quarterback, right? Because I think Daniel Jones just does not, I just don't see it. I don't see him taking this massive step forward where now he's throwing for 30 plus touchdowns, which is going to sustain the value of these receiving weapons. When you do have so many different options, the ball has to be spread around a ton here in this offense. It's not like one of these other offenses that we say, okay, they've got, New Orleans. They've got Michael Thomas here. They've got Alvin Kamara, and that's pretty much it. Someone else has got to step up. No, it's Kenny Galladay. It's, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. You listed Kadarius Toney they brought in the first round. Saquon Barkley out of the backfield. They've got Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph. In order for all of these guys to return fantasy value, Daniel Jones has to throw for 30 plus touchdowns. And I just don't see that happening.
I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't bring in, look, Mike Glennon is not the guy that I thought they were going to bring in here this offseason. I thought they would bring in, not Ryan Fitzpatrick, but somebody in that mold, a veteran quarterback that you really think, hey, this guy could go out there and win some games if we have to make this choice. Because we all know this division's up for grabs. We all know what happened last year, potentially. It's going to be potentially tight again. One injury could really change the dynamic of it. So, Tags, what do you see in this offense? Because, look, it has to begin with Daniel Jones. As much as we want to talk about Saquon from a fantasy standpoint, if Daniel Jones doesn't perform well and then it pivots to Mike Glennon, I don't know what the hell happens.
Yeah, no, Daniel Jones to me, it's like a Mitch Trubisky type situation where, Giants fans are hoping that he pans out. And I think it was ignorant of the Giants to totally say, we're not even going to think about a quarterback in this draft, because they had a chance to take Justin Fields where they were at. Daniel Jones is not a lock to be their quarterback next year. That's where I'm at with it, and that tells you a lot about the situation. And it's one that you almost want to avoid in fantasy football, because when I look at wide receivers, what does team scoring mean and all that stuff? To finish as a top 18 wide receiver, 78% of those wide receivers come from top 18 scoring offenses. So basically, we need the Giants to be better than average as an offense. Can I say that with Daniel Jones? I absolutely cannot say that. So therefore, Kenny Galladay falls into that situation where it's like, what's his upside? If people are like, oh, I think you're getting a wide receiver 2 that has wide receiver 1 upside. Well, I'll tell you this. You don't finish as a wide receiver 1 if you're on a bad offense. You just don't. Go and look at it through the last couple of years. You will see that it's almost all. There might be one per season that finishes, from an offense that's outside the top 15.
Well, like Allen Robinson comes to mind.
He's the only one that's done it in 2 years running.
I was going to say, the only one off the top of my head is Allen Robinson, who's just perennially that guy. But
it helps that he's seen 150 plus targets in each season.
That was my next point, was to give him 150 targets. And, it's a better opportunity there. But what about Saquon, too? I mean, how does, because the numbers certainly with Saquon on the field of Daniel Jones are better. Of course they would be, because, you dump off a couple balls, Saquon Barkley, all of a sudden a 5-yard pass turns into, a 50-yard pass. So I guess here's the question is, what is your expectation here? It's still going to cost you massive draft capital to get involved with Saquon Barkley. Do you feel comfortable doing this? He is such an incredible talent when he's on the field, but on the field has been a problem 2 years in a row. Where do you stand, Tags, with Saquon?
It's very possible that Saquon Barkley has an Ezekiel Elliott 2020 season this year. And I say that because the offense is obviously going to be lacking. It's not Dak Prescott. It's Daniel Jones, a guy that threw, 11 touchdowns. It's him. It's a terrible offensive line. They lost Kevin Zeitler, like probably their best offensive lineman, like the only one that was like a veteran that you knew what you were getting out of him. He's gone. I don't know what the Giants are doing. It's like they added a bunch of weapons to this offense, sure, but if you're not blocking, it really doesn't matter. And it's still the same offense. It's still the same scheme. That didn't change. So therefore, I think I think the volume is going to be there. I think Saquon Barkley will finish as a top 5 running back in terms of actual opportunity and expected fantasy output, which we've already talked about. That has plenty of value as a first-round pick. You are not going to lose your fantasy league because you took Saquon Barkley in the first round unless he gets hurt. And again, if you want to avoid running backs with injuries, that's on you. That's up to you. It could happen any year. Christian McCaffrey wasn't injury-prone till all of a sudden he got hurt last year. Now people are telling me he's injury-prone. Don't bet on injury, just bet on opportunity. Saquon's going to get it, and that's why he's a safe pick. But understand that this offense will hold him back. This offense is not going to allow him. I don't think this offense allows him to finish as the RB1 in fantasy football. I don't.
Yates, how safe is Saquon if the offense holds him back and you have the injuries?
I don't think he's very safe. I think, from a projection standpoint, he spits out to RB5. So, I think that the chances of him returning top 5 value are there. Of course, he's got to stay healthy. But when you take into account his draft price, that he's going off the board as a top 3 running back, and then that's not even taking into account his injury history. And then also, people still have this perception that he's going to get the target totals that he did with Eli Manning. Where in this offense is that going to come from? This is not going to be an offense that's throwing as much as Dallas, right? Mm-hmm. And so with New York, this is still, they want to be a well-balanced team. They want to rely on their defense with Joe Judge. They've got the firepower here, but they're not going to be this offense that is going to just be throwing the ball a ton, especially when you have to rely on Daniel Jones to do it. So where are the target totals going to come from that are going to elevate Saquon to a top 2, top 3 finish? I just don't see it there. There are other guys that I'm willing to take that shot on. Now, I would love to have Saquon on my fantasy team. Don't get me wrong. He is an incredibly talented player. Watching his highlights, you're going to see these. He'll pop off for a big play here or there. It's going to come up on red zone here or there. It's going to be great. It's going to be so exciting to have him on your fantasy roster. But at that price, that is just a huge price to pay for Saquon Barkley.
I got to tell you, too, I think it's a scenario where in auction drafts, if I get a slight discount on Saquon, I'm very interested. And this is the difference of, when you have snake versus auction drafts, sometimes certain players become more appealing in different formats because sometimes they might look at that. You might save $5 on Saquon Barkley year over year because of what the last 2 years have been for him. Would you rather have Alvin Kamara, Yates, or Saquon Barkley?
Kamara, pretty easily.
The same thing for you, Tags?
No, I'll take Barkley. I'll take the expected opportunity. Kamara's always efficient. He's legit one that always finishes better than he's expected to. But with Breeze leaving, it does add a question mark, and we saw part of it with Taysom Hill last year. Taysom Hill, if he starts, he's going to steal some of that upside. He's losing some goal line touches, and that sucks. I just don't want to lose it in my first round. And Saquon Barkley is going to get opportunity. As long as he's on the field, that dude's getting 20 touches a week. It's happening. Devontae Booker is not going to stop that.
Let's see what we make of the Washington football team now. Because obviously from the defensive side, this is a great look. Everybody loves the defense of the Washington football team. This was the team that when all is said and done represented this division in the playoffs. And they've got a new quarterback, which is any quarterback is an upgrade over what happened last year here. It was an absolute unmitigated disaster. And, good on Alex Smith for having a couple good weeks there. And it was a great story. But let's be honest, quarterback play was not good for this football team. And this year they bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I think once again, Ryan Fitzpatrick rolls into town. You can hold that whole cycle and throw that up there about every time he's the starter, he's not very good. When he's not supposed to be the starter, all of a sudden he's good. I don't care. He's a veteran quarterback. He puts up stats. You're giving him a wide receiver core of Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel. Humphreys is not somebody he's foreign to. This was a player that he played with in Tampa. They drafted De'Ami Brown. You got all the Sims brothers there still. Logan Thomas is a tight end out there. There's a lot of options. And the running game's pretty sound. So, Tags, when you look at this Washington football team offense, how much better can they be? And can they be good enough where we start to actually, for the first time in a while, consider Washington players as fantasy assets?
I mean, there's always value with some players. Like Terry McLaurin was a guy that we were drafting as a borderline wide receiver 1 last year. But again, it all comes back to the idea of how great is the offense going to be. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a very competent quarterback. Do I think he's an elite quarterback? No. Let's get out of that conversation. He's really not. No. Washington's offensive line is actually sneaky. They're pretty good. They made a couple of quality signings recently too. The offensive line is kind of turning things around there. What you have to like is that their offensive coordinator he's thrown the ball a lot. Over the last couple of years with some really bad quarterbacks, going back to Carolina, going into Washington last year, they've thrown the ball a lot more than expected, but this defense continues to get better, especially under Ron Rivera. And it's now do they dial back some of those pass attempts because it's like, hey, our defense is good enough to win these football games. We just need you not to lose it. But then you think, do we bring in a quarterback like Ryan Fitzpatrick because we want a game manager? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I love the fact that they got Fitzpatrick because he's definitely an upgrade. But I'm a little bit torn on this offense in terms of how to feel about them, because I could see them throwing the ball a lot with Scott Turner because, again, that's just what he's done to this point. Even last year with some bad quarterbacks and a good defense, they threw the ball quite a bit. But again, we're hearing so much about Antonio Gibson, and I'm so torn because I think he's a really good football player. He outperformed expectations last year. He scored many more touchdowns than he should have. But now they're saying that he's going to be more involved. Cool, I believe that. But how much more involved? You know, you have Logan Thomas, who came out in the second half of last year, got a lot of targets, performed with them exceptionally well. Ron Rivera said the light went off for him. Terry McLaurin's not losing targets. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy that over the course of his career hasn't heavily targeted running backs. He's not Drew Brees, guys. He takes shots. He throws to his wide receivers. You have to love McLaurin. They drafted De'Ami Brown. They're getting Kelvin Harmon back. They drafted Antonio Gandy Golden last year. You have J.D. McKissic, who's on the roster, who did great in his role last year, which, by the way, had more expected fantasy output than Antonio Gibson last year. And then you also, they draft Jared Patterson. So you have a bunch of guys here that can all collect targets. So it's like, I'm giving Antonio Gibson a bump in targets, but how is he that much different than someone like J.K. Dobbins? And Dobbins is part of a much more potent offense that I know year in, year out is a top 6 scoring offense. So I can't get there with Antonio Gibson, not because he's not a good football player, but with the way this offense is built, the players they have around him, and I just think there's a ceiling on his touches.
All right, Yates, how do you feel about the Washington offense?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what this team does. I mean, if anything, it's going to be exciting to watch. So I think with Fitzpatrick, he's going to be in that weekly streaming consideration. You plug him in good matchups, and I think you're going to get a return on investment there. With Terry McLaurin, I've got him at wide receiver 10. I'm all in on McLaurin this year. I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is just going to funnel him the ball, and I think it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. These other guys of Curtis Samuel, De'Ami Brown, I'm not super excited about them. Logan Thomas, I've got at tight end 12. Gibson, though, I'm going to disagree with Tags. I've got Gibson at RB 13, and I think that the case could be made that he rises up higher than that. I think that there is a case that he can finish with 70-plus targets in this offense, and that is going to be enough with his talent and what he can do after the catch to be able to make up for it. So I'm really excited about Gibson. I don't have him over some of these other more consistent, proven guys that we know, but as far as one of those players that could break out this year and truly ascend into a top 5 category, I think Gibson's it.
Well, that brings us to our next part here.
Can I ask Yates one?
Sure.
I want to throw a stat at Yates and see if it might change his opinion
Yates,
on them a
duck.
little bit.
He's going to throw a stat at you. Be
Duck.
careful.
No. I think I don't have the exact numbers in front of me because I didn't think I'd be bringing it up. But over the last, I think it's 4 or 5 years, there's only been one running back tight end duo on the same team to combine for more than 182 targets. So if we give Logan Thomas, I have him projected at 102 targets. It's almost like the same thing with Saquon Barkley, right? Where we talked about him, where Evan Ingram was always going to cap the upside in terms of targets when he was on the field. Eli Manning checked down a whole lot more. But now we have a quarterback who traditionally doesn't check down a whole lot, which is typically where running backs and tight ends get their targets. So, and again, are you going to wipe out J.D. McKissic? Are you going to all of a sudden say he's going to get 40 targets this season? That's the part where I'm struggling because I
think he does get wiped out. I think all injuries aside,
why wouldn't they have done it last year then?
I mean,
because they couldn't do it last year,
out.
because they had to have McKissic be part
40.
of it, because nobody could do anything in terms of moving the football last year at the quarterback position. So I think that was their best device, was just continuously trying to find these guys in screens, trying to get these guys out there in space a little bit and let those running backs do that. I don't think you have to do that as much now. To me, it's McKissic who gets the biggest downside of anybody in this offense, for sure. And it's not a knock on McKissic. It's just, I think, their vision of what Gibson can be in year 2 more than anything. But I'll let you answer, because it's really for you.
McKissic went from 110 targets last year. That's what he saw. I've got him at 60 this year. So I've got Logan Thomas with 89, Antonio Gibson with 71, and then McKissic with 60. So I think McKissic is still going to be involved, but Gibson is going to take over, in my opinion, in my projections, to be that number 1 target at the running back position.
Some solid discussions today. I like this. I like where things are going. So let's kick it up a notch. Let's do our sleeper, bust, and breakout. We'll lightning round through these. We'll start with the sleepers. I'm going to start with Blake Jarwin is mine. ECR, again, expert consensus ranking, tight end 18. 120 targets to the tight end position from the Cowboys in 2019. Last year, 105 with Dalton Schultz. And, Blake Jarwin's 1 target, I think. But look, to me, I'm looking always for those later guys who might return. And I understand that, of course, he's well behind these other guys in terms of Gallup and CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. However, it doesn't mean that he can't have some moments, and it doesn't mean he's not going to be running around being difficult to guard when everybody's accounting for all these other weapons that they have. And that is part of the appeal to me at tight end 18, especially in some of these tight end premium leagues where you're really looking for more depth there in those formats. I think Jarwin could possibly be that guy. Tags, who's your sleeper?
It's Blake Jarwin.
Oh, well then. Aren't we smart and handsome?
No, we're not.
Well, speak for yourself, my friend.
But yeah, not all of us are tan. But no, in reality, Dalton Schultz last year, the backup tight end to Blake Jarwin. So Jarwin was expected to be the breakout candidate. The Cowboys talked him up all camp. Coming off the injury, Dalton Schultz came in, took over as a starter for 15 weeks last year, and Dalton Schultz finished with the 13th most opportunity. Again, all these stats I'm referencing, I'm loving the fact that I literally just did the research for this article, so I'm able to use them all the time. But he had the 13th most expected fantasy points last year, and that's with Amari Cooper being healthy, CeeDee Lamb being healthy, Michael Gallup being healthy, and Dak Prescott missing 11 games last year. So for me, Blake Jarwin, when I did my projections, he came in at tight end 13. I don't know if I'm going to rank him that high, but I believe that he's probably going to finish in that territory. The reason that you struggle to rank him higher than that, because you're like, okay, with those wide receivers healthy, he does fall behind the pecking order, but at the same time, the opportunity is clearly there, and that was there for a backup tight end. Dalton Schultz had 3 fantasy points fewer expected than someone like Noah Fant, who's going to be going as a top 8 tight end in most drafts. So
yep, we just talked about that on another recent show too. Now, Yates, you've got a sleeper, but you've also got a breakout, and your breakout is who?
That would be Blake Jarwin.
Oh my goodness. Let's sweep around here.
And it goes to what Tags talked about when we were talking about Dallas, is that this is a very top-heavy depth chart. So when you are sitting down and you're projecting Dallas to throw as much as they are going to, and then you don't have to allocate targets to some of these lower tier options, right? Of Dalton Schultz, I think he goes back to a backup role. I mean, Noah Brown, no. So it's the top 3 options there, and then you've got Zeke and Pollard. So there's more than enough opportunity here for Jarwin to at least be in that conversation of low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2.
All right, fair enough. So he's your breakout, but your actual sleeper was who?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Michael Gallup. I mean, he's wide receiver 47 in ECR right now. And that is, I think, based on what we had with Andy Dalton, where from weeks 5 through 17, Michael Gallup was the wide receiver 43 or something like that. Like, it was not a great performance here from Gallup all throughout last year, but the talent is still there. And again, the opportunity in this offense, there's more than enough pass attempts to go around. So Gallup, I've got at wide receiver 35 right now in my rankings. So that is the perfect price where I can say, when we get to that flex conversation, I can draft Michael Gallup knowing that I've got him projected for higher than that he comes with this boom or bust upside, but yet I can plug that into my flex and I can be fine living with it, right? Because of his price tag. If he was going as the wide receiver 30 in ECR or ADP, like that would be a different conversation where I'd say, okay, that's a little bit too boom or bust for my liking, where I have to draft him as a wide receiver 3 and live with that, where I can draft him as a flex option, a low-end flex option, and then get those boom weeks that can put my lineup over the top. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
All right, bust for me is going to be Miles Sanders, ECR, RB19 right now. We talked about this at length too. Different offense, different running backs there, different possibilities, a lot to break down there. Bust, Tags, you've got a running back here as well from this division.
Yeah, mine's more based on, where he's being drafted. And the hype is getting out of control. Antonio Gibson is right now ADP and ECR, I think, are RB12. And it seems like the love is only growing. I think he's going to end up going as like the number 10 running back in drafts. And that's just too high for my taste. I mean, again, you're projecting. Yates was talking about, I think he can get 70 targets. If he gets 70 targets, yes, he can live up to that. But that's an if. We haven't seen it yet. This team eased him in last year. They openly said that. And again, I think there's reasons to hope that he gets there. But when you're taking a guy at RB10, you're talking about a high second round pick. It's almost like Josh Jacobs, right? Mm-hmm. Josh Jacobs, last year, people were drafting at the end of the first round, and I said, I'm not going to do it because I haven't seen him utilized in the passing game the way that he needs to be in order to justify that position. Now, you're going to have those people that come out afterwards, after the end of last year, and they're going to say, well, he finishes the RB8 last year, Tags. Well, ask anybody that had Josh Jacobs in their roster. Ask if he was an RB1 and if they would draft him at the end of the first round again. The answer would be a resounding no. He would be more of a third-round pick. And Gibson, again, to me, if you want to take a shot on him at the top of the third round, cool, I'm in. But if you tell me I have to invest a high second-round pick in order to get Antonio Gibson, it's just a bust based on where he's being drafted. That's all.
Was that guy that yelled at you Tony Danza? Because it kind of sounded a little like what are you doing with it? It's Josh Jacobs there, Tags. I don't even know what's
They all sound the same. They all have the same accent.
You finished RB number 8, right?
They all sound like Joe Pisapia when they yell at me.
Tags, I follow you on Twitter, and I don't know what the hell's going on. All right, give me your bust, Yates. Who's your bust in this division this year?
Yeah, it's Jalen Hurts, and it's for a lot of the reasons that we talked about. Where it's just I think that and a very very similar argument to Tags, where I think that we're going to see his price tag increase as the offseason goes along. So Jalen Hurts, I think the hype has gotten a little bit too out of control. I'm going to be pumping the brakes here and saying that he's not going to be worth drafting there at QB 10 right now, and I think that we could see him rise all the way up to QB 7.
And one man's bust is another man's breakout. Tags. Your breakout is Jalen Hurts.
It is Jalen Hurts. So I mean, that's the thing is we've already talked about Jalen Hurts in length on this episode, and I will agree with Yates though. He did mention one name when we were talking about it, is that I would take Ryan Tannehill over him, but the other guys no. I wouldn't. I'll take Jalen Hurts over Tom Brady, and not because he's better quarterback or anything like that. Not because Tom Brady might not finish higher, but because I know the ceiling for Tom Brady. The ceiling was last year for Tom Brady. So, I mean, again, no mobility. It limits your upside. So if you're going to take a quarterback there, take a shot.
For me, the breakout is going to be DeVonta Smith. I love where he's going right now in terms of draft capital. He's wide receiver 41 in ECR. And for me, I think he's the best wide receiver on this roster right now. And I think he's going to show everybody week 1 that
that's clear, right? Like, that's easy.
It's clear. It's easy. And it's also something where I'm not worried about the body now. I'm not worried about all the other things that people are worried about, all the projectables. I'm just worried about winning football right now in redraft leagues in 21. Mm-hmm. And I think he can help you do that at that ADP and that ECR. And that's what I'm getting.
He's the most pro-ready receiver that came out. Like,
I know.
Jamar Chase had a year off football, too.
And everybody wants to talk about the negative things. Let's talk about some of the positive things. Watch this kid play football and then get back to me about that. And again, I'm somebody concerned with the Eagles' offense. DeVonta Smith is that one guy that I really want a part of in that offense because I do think he is going to be the best thing in terms of return on investment. That's what I'm about. Let's return your investment in this podcast with a little game we like to call What's Trending. And Morgan Freeman, I don't even know why it was trending for some reason this morning on Twitter. So I'm going to ask you guys, who do you want to narrate your life story? Is it a Morgan Freeman? Is it a James Earl Jones?
It's a Liam Neeson. 100%.
Liam Neeson for you. That's a good one.
That dude's voice. Yeah.
For me, it's Tony Danza, obviously. That's what. How about you, Yates? Who's going to be your... Joe was born in Brooklyn, and then we work for FantasyPros. How about you, Yates? What do you...
I mean, it has to be Morgan Freeman. Like, just his voice is so iconic. I mean, yeah, James Earl Jones, you can throw into that conversation, but Morgan Freeman, from just an iconic standpoint, I'll go Freeman.
Josh Charles does a really good, but I just want to put all the football lives that Josh Charles is the guy who does the narrations for. They're tremendous. He does a great job on those. So shout out to Josh Charles. Let's get him on the show. Somebody, we're Blaine Dan. Can we get, where's John? Can we get Josh Charles on the show? Let's do that. All right, Back to the Future also was trending this morning. Here's a question for you. If you had the sports almanac, that you could go back to the future with and bring it back and have all this sports knowledge, Tags, would you use it to become the greatest fantasy analyst ever by cheating?
No, I wouldn't. I would use it to sports.
You were gonna say
I would use it to sports bet, and I'd be rich. I'd be on an island. I wouldn't be talking. I would not be talking to you guys right now. That's for sure.
I knew there was two answers. It was gonna be yes, I'm gonna have my integrity about that, but I'm gonna just privately wager and go live on an island. Or the other option I thought he was gonna say to me was, I already am the greatest fantasy sports analyst. Yates, how about you? Would you cheat and use the almanac?
I would not cheat. I would keep the integrity there.
All right.
The betting is an intriguing option. I don't know if I could actually pull the trigger on it, though.
Oh, I'm pulling the trigger on it. Look how tan I am right now after 3 days. Imagine me on the island living. Oh, my goodness. So good. All right, so last one here. Method Man trending after a fantastic tribute to DMX on the BET Awards this weekend. So that was some cool stuff. Who's your favorite member of the Wu-Tang Clan? I'm just putting this out there. I mean, I always loved Method Man myself. I was a Method Man guy, but I got a soft spot for ODB. I love the first album. I mean, I don't know, man. Return to the 36 Chambers This is a great album. Shimmy, shimmy, ya. I can list the guys too. You got Raekwon, you got Jizza, RZA, Ghostface Killer, Inspected Deck. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there to choose from. Yates, do you know anyone that I'm talking about?
You said a whole bunch of words that I have absolutely no idea what they mean at all.
Okay, that's what I figured. Man. Tags, save us here.
Anything before Yates was born, which was like 2001, you can't talk about.
That's crazy. Like, I don't know who Jimi Hendrix is or something like that. Like, I mean, come on. What's it's music?
To be fair.
And plus, he grew up with the internet where he could access everything. We had to go get, like, albums and cassette tapes, for God's sake.
No, mine would, I mean, I wasn't a big Wu-Tang guy, but Method Man would definitely be the one I would go with. Like, I liked Method Man. And obviously he's done collaborations with, like, Redman. But yeah, I wasn't a big Wu-Tang guy, so I don't want to get in too far into that conversation, but I'd go with Method Man.
I like the Wu-Tang Clan. So there you go. But we already knew that. So let's, again, want to thank our sponsors of today's show. We have, of course, Deal Dash. Go out there, be like Tags, get the burn cream for your head that I need so much. Go to dealdash.com. Again, you get 100 free bids and use that promo code PROS. Also, I want to remind everybody, go get that Stephon Diggs jersey. It's only a few days left. Go to fantasypros.com/contest for all the rules to get involved with that. It's so simple. It can be yours thanks to our friends, our good buddies, our good pals at pristineauction.com. And don't forget, you got two important things to do. Join the chat. Be part of us. Be part of this group here. fantasypros.com/chat over on Discord. It's free to join. But I'm telling you, it's going to pay for itself if you go up to that premium membership over there, because we're going to do a lot of fun interactive stuff July, August, and all through the season there. It's going to be where the cool kids hang out, so come hang out with us. And once again, I want to remind everybody, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can watch the podcast. It's one thing to listen to the podcast. That's half the experience. Watching the podcast, that's where it's at. So that'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Tags and Yates, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.